It was early 1981 when I first got the call. The Pacific Northwest had seen a string of brutal attacks, robberies, SA, and murders along Interstate 5. It felt like chaos, random at first, but I knew better. There was a pattern emerging, something darker behind these crimes. My job? To follow the clues, piece by piece, before another life was snuffed out. The first known attack occurred on October 9th, 1980, when the bodies of two young women, Sherry Hull and Beth Wilmot, were found inside a business in Portland, Oregon. Both had been SA and shot. Beth survived, miraculously, but her life was forever scarred. The killer, though, vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a trail of blood and confusion. I knew this case wouldn't be easy. The crime scenes were messy, violent, but they were also calculated. The brutality had a rhythm to it, a twisted purpose. Whoever this man was, he didn't just want to kill, he wanted control. He enjoyed watching his victims suffer. Over the next few months, the attacks increased. Small towns along the I-5 corridor were gripped with fear as more reports came in. Home invasions, store robberies, and again, the SAA description of the assailant was forming. A tall, athletic man, often wearing a hood or mask. He moved quickly, sometimes robbing or SA multiple victims in a single night, only to disappear into the night without leaving much behind. Every time we got close, he slipped away. It was in early February 1981 when things took a more chilling turn. I was driving along Interstate 5 myself when the call came through. A 20-year-old college student, Sherry Ayers, had been found in her apartment in Portland. She had been brutally beaten, subjected to the R word, and stabbed to death. The violence in her murder was unlike anything we'd seen before, even in this spree. I stared at the crime scene photos, her bright future, snuffed out in one horrific night. The killer was escalating. I felt it in my bones. The break came with a survivor, a woman named Lisa Garcia. In late February 1981, she was working late in a restaurant in Southern Oregon when the man burst in. Masked and armed with a gun, he SA'd her. But as he fled the scene, she caught a glimpse of his face when his mask slipped. She remembered it clearly. Young, handsome, and eerily calm in the midst of his violence. Her description would turn out to be crucial later on. By now, we had a nickname for this monster, the I-5 Killer, because of the trail of horror he was leaving up and down the interstate. I was spending nights poring over files, maps, and photos, trying to connect the dots. The FBI had joined in, but nothing concrete was coming up. We needed a name. We needed to catch him before he claimed another life. I followed every lead I could. The suspect seemed to target young women, mostly alone or in small businesses where he could overpower them. He struck fast, violently, and always vanished. The more I dug, the more I realized this man was incredibly organized. He knew exactly when to strike and where to go. In late February 1981, a name surfaced, Randall Brent Woodfield, a former semi-pro football player with a troubled past. He had been arrested for indecent exposure several times, and the crimes bore similarities to his known behavior. But that was small time compared to what I believed he was capable of. With help from local law enforcement and the FBI, we pulled together enough evidence to bring him in. Interviews with survivors, coupled with forensic evidence, led to the arrest of Randall Woodfield on March 5th, 1981. The moment I looked into his eyes, I knew he was the man we'd been chasing. Cold, detached. There was no remorse, no flicker of humanity in him. The man who once tried to make it big in football had turned into one of the most dangerous predators in the Pacific Northwest. As the trial began, the horrifying truth came to light. Randall Woodfield was charged with multiple murders, SA, and robberies. His victims were scattered along the I-5 corridor from Washington to California, and the number was far higher than we had initially thought. The twist, if there was one, was in the sheer normalcy of his outward appearance. Woodfield was good-looking, athletic, and charming, the kind of person you'd never suspect as a cold-blooded killer. But beneath the surface was a man driven by violent urges and a desire for domination. His victims, like Sherry Ayers and Sherry Hull, had their lives torn apart by his brutality. Others, like Beth Wilmot and Lisa Garcia, lived to tell their stories, though the scars would never truly fade. By the time we were done, Randall Woodfield had been linked to as many as 44 attacks, including up to 18 murders. The full extent of his crimes may never be known. In 1981, he was convicted of multiple counts of murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.